Hi, I am Deborah R. Richardson of Deborah R. Richardson LLC, and I work with you to help you clean up your vendor data, clean up your vendor processes so that you pay the right vendor. Now, this week's vendor master file tip of the week is I asked Copilot to scan a suspicious email. And I finally learned why I keep sending scam emails to myself. And you will see what I mean in just a moment. So here is the suspicious email. And I received it, 8:32 p.m. Last night. And so I came in to this email and it did say, I think it shows up as a highly important email. And so I thought, okay, so I sent it to myself. Okay. And it was a fax document that's received. And, just so if you don't know, there are still, faxes out there. And every time I have to send a fax, I have to find how I'm going to send a fax. But, every year or so, I have to send a fax. So they're still out there. Anyway, yes, it looks suspicious. Look at the reference ID. It says there's a signature requested, there's a reminder, and I am not at all expecting, right, anything that I have a signature where a signature is going to be required. So I thought, let me just put this into Copilot and see what Copilot says, right? If you have the tool, why not use it? Now, a caveat on that, if you are at work, make sure that it is approved because you need to make sure you're using an enterprise version so that you are not potentially exposing, right, company information out there. But as long as you have approval and maybe you have Cowork as or Copilot as a personal um, AI tool, then let's try it. So all I did is I dragged and dropped this email into Copilot. And the first thing it told me is that it would upload a copy of the whatever the document, whatever document, email or anything else, it would upload a copy of it to OneDrive. And that's fine. So anyway, I put the dragged and dropped the email into Copilot and I told it to check for social engineering, red flags, should be red flags with a S plural, and phishing. Now notice I didn't have to explain what social engineering was. I didn't have to explain what phishing was. And so as soon as I did that, it just came back immediately and said yes, based on the content. I would treat this email as highly suspicious and likely a phishing attempt, but it does go into detail. And so the first thing that it saw is it identified the social engineering and phishing red flags. And it first saw that there was a suspicious link designation. The email asks you to review a fax document, but the review document button links to an Amazon S3 hosted website. So would you have known to look for that? I would not have known that, but Copilot found it. It also indicated that it's not a recognized fax service domain. And then it tells you the URL is attempting to redirect users to a web page that likely harvests credentials. Now, the second thing it said, it talked about the fact that it has a generic sender identity, and it's, the email signed only as document services team. So that's another thing. And then it talked about the urgency and curiosity trigger, because this is the first time I've ever received that email or that fraudulent or phishing email, and it automatically had reminder on it. And when we get emails with a subject line that says reminder, that kind of triggers something because we're like, reminder what? I know I'm on top of everything that I should be doing. Why do I need a reminder? So, and anyway, that is a trigger, and so that's why they use it because you're more likely to open it as well. And then the next thing is it talked about the vague message content. because it doesn't say who sent the fax, what organization sent it, and legitimate business communication will generally, right, provide context. And here there was none. The next thing it found is that, yes, it has a generic greeting. So it used, right, what was before the domain and the email address, which is info. So, I guess my name is info. So that is an indicator of scam email. And then this one is the one that I really like seeing because it talked about credential harvesting indicators. And one thing that I did not know is this whole base 64 encoded email address parameter. And so it pulled out that something that I could not see, and you probably couldn't see it either, right? The base 64 encoded parameters or characters that translates to, right, my email address. And so if we take a look back at the address portion of the email. That's what made it seem like I was sending this email to myself. And so this allowed me to finally understand why I keep sending scam emails to myself. And then next, it talked about the fake security language. So, yeah, no, this document is not securely encrypted and protected, but thanks for trying to make me feel better. And then also, this little strip that was across the top of the email that said, you know what, this sender has been verified by, Debra R. Richardson organizations, safe sender list. Yeah, but Deborah Richardson didn't do that. And so it's just language that has been typed on there. And then also, the final thing it gave was just a risk assessment saying that its, likelihood of phishing is very high. And then it gave some recommended actions. Now, in a minute, I'm going to tell you how you can control those recommended actions. But first, I wanted to show you that while I was preparing for this video, another one came in. So here's that. I do remember seeing, right, that it was of high importance. This is the one that came in last night, the one we just reviewed. And so I hadn't done anything with it. And so it came right back again at 11:40 2 a.m. while I was preparing for this video. So thank you, Frosters. You gave me even more, right, ammunition to know that this is a fraud. Now, when I talked about controlling the recommended actions, you can actually build an agent for Outlook to spot vendor bank change red flags. But when you build an agent, so you're not just dropping or dragging and dropping an email and telling it what to do. You build an agent, and when you build an agent, you can actually upload documents that can uh, guide Copilot to tell you what to do, what those recommended actions are versus using what they identify. Because maybe you have different instructions. Maybe you want them to go to IT. Maybe you want them to follow another path, maybe seek out the supervisor or the manager. And then maybe you have other verification steps. And that is a way that you could control the recommendations when you do use Copilot to scan and identify if a suspicious email is a fraudulent email. And so this training session will show you how to do that. I will have a link in the description and or you can scan the QR code there. All right. So if you would like more information on how to improve your vendor process, how to avoid fraud, please go to my website at training.deborarrichardson.com. There you'll find both free tools and resources to avoid fraud, regulatory fines, and bad vendor data, and also paid resources for annual training hours, and I think I have now like 173 plus annual hours of training on different vendor process topics. So make sure you check out the Vendor Process Training Center. Again, that is at training.deborarrichardson.com. So good luck and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified next Tuesday for the next Vendor Master File tip of the week.